Good afternoon and welcome to the Joy Show. I'm Barbara Jean, your host, and I am so delighted you're taking time to watch the show today. You are in for a treat. The Joy Show is all about interviewing people or having conversations around living authentically, finding your passion, your purpose, and there's just one you, so be that. Anyway, we will be meeting our guest shortly. In the meantime, let us begin with a land acknowledgement. We work, live, and play on the historical and traditional territory of many First Nations. And as we gather on Turtle Island, we as settlers are grateful for the opportunity to meet here. And we thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years, including the Métis, Inuit, and all other Indigenous people. Also acknowledging that as we continue to grow and expand on these lands, there is still unresolved and dangerous inequality and discrimination toward our BIPOC and 2S LGBTQ plus family. By making these acknowledgments, we strive to be allies and take an active part in reconciliation. We recognize our oneness, we realize our history, and we choose to create a new reality. We are one. Well, my guest today is a remarkable human being. Jan Phillips is a thought leader who connects the dots between spiritual intelligence, evolutionary creativity, and social transformation. She's the author of 11 award-winning books, has taught in over 25 countries, and has published works in the New York Times, Ms., Newsday, People, Parade Magazine, Christian Science Monitor, New Age Journal, National Catholic Reporter, Sun Magazine, and Utne Reader. Her memoir, Still on Fire, Field Notes from a Queer Mystic, was released by Unity Books in October of 2021. Welcome, Jan Phillips.
Hey, thank you
Yes.
for having me here.
Well, I'm so glad you're here. Your story is so remarkable. And for me, the mystic path is like that's the path, because religion has kind of messed things up a little
I'll
bit.
say in spades.
It's true. It's true. Now, your journey to where you are today is so rich and beautiful. Can you give us a little history lesson to start with, where you got started on your spiritual path and how you've become the mystic you are today?
Oh boy, oh boy. Well, I'd say around age 12, when we begin to move into our puberty and discover who we might be, I realized, uh-oh, I'm gay, I'm Catholic. This is a deadly combination. So I, became suicidal because the life ahead of me was very glum when I imagined it, because I couldn't, my family, the culture, the church, everyone was against this terrible homosexual ugh, life.
Mhm.
And so my sixth grade nun discovered that I was really depressed and sad, and she began a campaign called Positive Reinforcement to
Mhm.
take me out of that, to get my inner, to kind of stoke my inner fire, which was
Yeah.
down to embers. And as a result of that, that felt to me like that sick little dying caterpillar became a butterfly.
Mm.
And when that happened, I decided right in that very same week or day or whenever I realized I was reborn, I decided to be a nun, because if nuns save kids' lives, that's what I wanted to do.
Wow.
So from that early age of 12, I knew I would be a nun. And so I entered the convent at age 18. But that's also a highly volatile age when we're beginning to experience our sensuality and have desire that's bigger than ever before. And there I am in a mother house of 400 nuns. So, of course, I fall in love. Of course, I fall in love. And that was my downfall.
Yeah.
And so they kicked me out after 2 years. And then the church, actually, a priest refused me absolution unless I stopped being gay, which, of course, I said to him in the confessional, you might as well ask me to turn my eyes brown.
Exactly.
That's how impossible it is. And so, because I wouldn't not be gay, he said, I'm not giving you absolution. So there goes my church. And I became a churchless young woman at age 20.
Wow. And that's got to be tough when so much of your life has been so devout to all of a sudden be pushed aside like that.
It was such a turbulent experience. It actually took me 20 years to get over it, and I was a mess. I did a lot of heavy drinking, a lot of drugging, a lot of promiscuous behavior. I was just a hot mess. But I had an experience 20 years after that event that caused me to be able to put it at rest and to realize there's nothing to forgive. It was a privilege for me to have that experience of 2 years of a monastic life. That's
Mm,
affected my life forever and ever, and it was all the grounding I needed in monasticism.
nice. I love that. I love that you could see your way past that initial, well, it was a trauma, really, that would to have your church and everything taken away like that, just because you are who you are.
It was a trauma, for sure.
Wow. And so you've moved past that. You've written a bunch of books, and your latest book sounds fascinating. I haven't read it yet, but it's on my list to to buy. I've got so many books I haven't read. I keep buying them, but this is one I definitely want to get because it really, even the title of it, I love that. Still on Fire.
I'll send you the PDF file of it so you could just have it on your computer.
Oh,
And
beautiful. Thank you.
anybody listening to this podcast, if you email Jan at janphillips.com and said, from Joy's podcast, please send me the PDF file, I'll do that. No charge.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Well, we'll make sure that we put that in the comments so people know if they've seen it here. Then, oh, that's very generous. Thank you. Thank you. So tell me about the journey after you got out of the well, you were kicked out of the church, and how have you found your way? What are you doing now? I know you've got a great TED Talk on your website.
Yeah, good TED Talk. Um, I consider myself a social activist more than anything. Even
Okay.
though to make a living, I've been writing books and mostly facilitating retreats and workshops that
Okay.
connect those dots: spiritual intelligence, evolutionary creativity, social justice. So that's my main work. But as a social activist, I started a company called Syracuse Cultural Workers back in the early 80s with
Mhm.
4 other social activists. It's still alive now. We publish and distribute artwork for and about social justice. So I'm no longer with them, but I'm the
Yeah,
co-mother of it. So I say we.
of
They're still in
course.
Syracuse, New York, and they have a great catalog of all things social justice oriented. Lots for LGBTQ community and syracusecultureworkers.com.
Oh,
And so
beautiful.
when I founded that organization with my cohorts, Ronald Reagan was president and was driving me nuts because he's escalating so much the nuclear proliferation. And
Mhm.
whenever I get anxious, I have to move because anxiety in my head makes me feel crazy.
Yeah,
So, and plus we weren't paying ourselves much money, so I had a side job working as a picture framer.
yeah.
And one day somebody leaves a copy of The 100th Monkey on my workbench. And that's also a book that's given away for free. There's millions of copies of it, and you can always get The 100th Monkey is called. And in that book was a story about this research on monkeys that made me exclaim in the restaurant. I was in the little restaurant on my lunch hour from being a picture framer. I said right out loud, "Oh my God, I could be the 100th person."
Yes.
It so moved me, this little teeny book that came out of nowhere. And after I finished my lunch, I went across the street and started a bank account, a savings account. And I said to the teller, "Here's $20. As soon as I get 5,000 in here, I'm making a peace pilgrimage around the world." She, of course, didn't know what I was talking about. But anyway, it took me a year and a half. I got several more jobs. I worked my little butt off. And hey, there's the 100. Yeah, there's the 100.
Good.
And started a peace pilgrimage. I've been photographing political rallies and demonstrations and activities since 1975. So I had a slideshow of the peace movement, a slideshow of the women's movement. And I left with that slideshow in a backpack, 200 rolls of film, started in Japan. My first gig was with the Nagasaki bomb survivors.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I tell the whole story in the book. I did it without a plan, and it was a crazy thing to do without a plan, but it worked out just fine. So it's very organic. I made it through 21 countries and showed my slides wherever I could. Spent a month in Japan, spent 3 months in India, spent a month in the Himalayas trekking to Annapurna. And all those experiences and all of those associations, because I never stayed in hotels. I was always with people, families who
Yeah.
let me in. And they were, Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Palestinians, Israelis, Buddhists. So I was inundated with the world faith traditions. And it happened at warp speed. And I just kept gobbling it up till I got home a year later and realized something huge had happened to me. Another transformation equivalent to 6th grade, which I was now a spiritual contemplative and not so much the political activist, because I had to figure out what the heck had happened to me.
Yeah.
And I'm the kind of person that doesn't know what happens until I write it out or speak it out or whatever. So I decided to write it out chronologically. So I ended up with a book that was published by Friendship Press called Making Peace, One Woman's Journey Around the World. It was a photographic book, full color, really beautiful. And in every chapter was a different country and revealed the transformative experiences in each of those countries. And then, she's so quick. Your assistant needs a raise.
She's very good.
So quick with all these images. So there's the book and
Yeah.
images from Japan and China and India. And as a result of writing that book, I was invited to teach at an International Women's Writers Conference, which has been going on for almost 50 years now.
Mhm.
And that's when I realized that women have been silenced. I never really felt too silenced myself because I'm just a bossy, bullish type of person that says you're not going to keep me from what I want.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say what I think. And that's my personality, thank goodness. So I never caved into the patriarchy's desire for women not to live out loud. So I was asked to teach at this conference, and what happened was everybody in the rooms raising their hands saying why they're not writing. I don't have time. I don't have space. My husband doesn't support me. Nobody wants my work. I can't deal with rejection. A whole litany of reasons for why they are not writing.
Or
So we were together for a whole week. And on the last day of class, we had a wedding ceremony where we married our muses. And that's what I called the class, Marry Your Muse. And so they all did that inner journey, found their inner muse, named her, created a really deep relationship with her. And then we had a wedding ceremony on the last day. And all of their commitments were actually reframes of what the problem was. Like the woman who said, I can't write because I don't have time. She would say her muse was Aphrodite. She would say, Dear Aphrodite, I vow to give you 1 hour each day to be with you and listen to you and play with you to honor my creativity, like that. And so they all blurted out their vows. And when I got home, I collected them, put them in a document, made a creed. It's called the Artist Creed with all of their vows. It was about, I believe I have the time it takes to create whatever I feel called to create. So the Artist Creed became my table of contents for the book Marry Your Muse. And that was the beginning, because now I have another political agenda, really, which is to unsilence women and
yes.
guide them toward the thing that they're here to draw attention to. So Marry Your Muse was my second book. And I've been writing books ever since. Whenever I encounter a problem, I write a book about it and then move on to the next thing.
Nice. I love
So
that.
now I have 11 books. I have encountered 11 problems.
Only 11. That's pretty good.
Lucky me.
So far. And as long as you're on this side of the grass, you might locate one or two more that you can write about. So that's
I'm
very,
working on one now called Stop Seeking, Start Finding.
oh, I love that. I
People
love
are
that.
always saying to me, I'm a seeker. And I go, oh no, how sad. I can't believe you haven't found it yet. It's so
Where can
findable, it's unavoidable, but we've been
yeah,
we've been enculturated. That's the problem with divinity. We've been enculturated to think of God as external, far away,
yeah.
inaccessible, when the exact opposite is true.
Judgmental.
Here's God right here. You can't see it, but I'm breathing it. You're breathing it.
Yeah.
We're all breathing it.
Yeah. It's every cell of your body, the activity of your mind, the table you're seated at, the computer we're talking on.
Right.
It's all God stuff.
All God stuff.
I love that. I love that. I think, when I think about the journey to kind of expressing our own authenticity, that we have really allowed the world around us, parents, siblings, teachers, media, whatever, to cause us to shrink. And I remember when my daughter was younger, I don't know if the TV show's still on, but there was a children's programming of a family, and the mother and her oldest daughter were always in competition. And I didn't want my daughter watching that show because I thought, what a horrible portrayal of the connection between women. And I was trying to explain it to my husband because he was going, "Oh, it's a pretty good show. Like, what's the problem?" And I went, "This is the problem." And there's so much of that in our world where we portray women as being really catty with one another. But I don't think that's the majority. We seek connection with each other.
I agree.
Yeah.
People who live consciously are living with that intention to create relationships of consequence.
Yeah.
And when you're busy doing that, there's no instinct for cattiness.
No, there isn't. There really isn't. It's, it's interesting. My daughter is 18 now, my youngest daughter. I have four, but my youngest is 18 and just went through a whole thing with her at school. She just graduated grade 12, but while she was in high school, she was a bit of a thorn in the side of the principal and most of the teachers because she's very conscious, very aware, and she doesn't let things sit. So she's very, very clear when the girls would get dress coded because they looked too sexy or whatever. She went to the principal and said, "Who's sexualizing the children here?" And of course, he goes, "Well, the teachers are." Well, if the teachers are sexualizing the kids, then you need to talk to your teachers, not the kids,
Good
right?
for her.
And the same thing with one of the teachers wore a t-shirt one day that said all lives matter. And again, she went to the principal and said, tell him to take it off, until Black lives matter, LGBTQ, trans lives, women's lives, until everybody's life matters, then that t-shirt can be worn, but not until. And
Yeah.
when I see that type of fierceness, and I know she got it because of the way we've raised her, but I've noticed even amongst her friends that they're much more conscious, less likely just to follow along because some person in power said so. And that's something that I think, bodes well moving forward if we have more of those voices of those young people that say, hey, enough.
Absolutely. And I think it's quite interesting now that we can actually see the evolution in action. Even
Mm.
the language these young kids are using is more I will say synthetic because they're synthesizing what I never had the ability to synthesize in my
Exactly.
teens. They're
Yeah.
really connecting dots and understanding. And it's unfortunate that those of us before them, have caused such a mess on this earth that they're now living with anxiety about the status of the planet. It's unconscionable, but it happened,
Yeah.
and there's nothing we can do about it, but always commit to trying to fix what went awry.
Yeah, I think part of that is sort of dismantling the colonialism that has been sort of the foundation of what we do. And the challenge of that is because we're so conditioned that we're living that life so automatically, we don't notice that we're doing it. And so it's about how do we raise consciousness or become more aware. And I think that's the whole journey of being a conscious creator is to really pay attention to every decision, not to judge and beat ourselves up over it, but to sit back and go, whoa, okay, now I have an awareness, I can do better. And we begin to evolve accordingly. I think that brings me hope.
Yeah, I think the creations that people are involved with now, how we apply our creativity, has a point, has a purpose. People are not just doing needlepoint and embroidering simple phrases. People are embroidering political statements, right?
Oh, yeah.
Using the old tools for a
Yes.
new consciousness. Painters, poets. When I was teaching early in the Writing Guild, women would write poems about their gardens or their children or whatever. And now there's more of an urgency to have our words address the critical issues of today. which is, conscious creativity.
Which is beautiful to see. I was watching RuPaul's Drag Race, and I think it was season 13, where one of the queens dressed all in white. She looked stunning as she came out on a black woman came out on the runway, all dressed in this gorgeous white gown. And when she turned around, there were two basically bullet holes in the back of her dress with blood,
Oh,
coming down from
wow.
that, and a sign that said something like, um, I can't remember what the sign said, but something like, "Let's call their names."
Oh, yeah.
And
Yep.
it was a huge political statement, but really well done, and I think so important that we're bringing that stuff to the forefront in everything that we do, because we must. At some point
Because
in
we
time,
must.
we gotta get it that we're in this together. We we have to.
Absolutely. Amen.
Yeah. And it's until we grasp that I'm as responsible for you as you are responsible for you. And I think when we start to really understand that, we can be better stewards of the planet, of our resources, of our people, everything that we do, the way that we treat our children. I'm still appalled when I hear teachers go, "Oh, well, boys will be boys." How can
Yeah.
you say that in this day and age?
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, God help us.
Oh, people will be people.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, we're at our halfway point, so we're going to take a little commercial break here so we can thank the people who donate to the New Thought Media Network, and also just to say thank you to all of you who watch. You're watching The Joy Show here on the New Thought Media Network, and we'll be right back with our remarkable guest, Jan Phillips.
Okay.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Spiritual Center, Kitchener, Om Center for Spiritual Living, La Mesa, Satya Center, Center for Spiritual Living, North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and Center for Spiritual Living, Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for making New Thought Media Network a place to be. Please come be you. And remember, like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
Watch me change when you change the way you look at things. The things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
And we're back. You're watching The Joy Show, and my guest today, Jan Phillips, is the author of many, many, many books, is a mystic and absolutely social activist doing all kinds of work all around the world. I am so delighted that you said yes to this interview. It's so great to talk to you. So tell me, what's next? Like, what things are kind of getting your gears going these days that make you feel passionate about the world and what's required?
Well, one thing is when I ask myself the question, what am I going to do about climate, about the catastrophe we're in the midst of?
Hmm.
It was really nice to get the response from the universe that said, do something with photographs. Because
Mm.
I'm not the one who goes like this and shames people. I'm the one that causes people to bow down and be in awe. It's like
Oh, I
Mary Oliver
love
said,
that.
adoration is the essential preparation for action. So now I am creating a an exhibition of 21 images that have an image of just the earth and an image from a, a person, an image of the earth, an image of a person that collides, the, that causes us to understand our oneness. Let me just get one and show you.
Oh,
That'll
yes,
help.
please. That would be wonderful. That's the thing, when we start talking about images, we want to see them.
This is
That
just a
becomes
test run. So there's
oh,
two images.
beautiful.
That's a stone monument in the Biscuit
Yeah.
Badlands. That's a friend of mine doing yoga on my dock. And the copy underneath says, we are of the earth, and the earth is of us. And within both is a pulsing fiery, illuminating force that propels us forward toward the light of light. So
Oh,
I
that's
have 20
beautiful.
of these. They're going to be 18 by 24, and a script from a video I made 15 years ago called All Our Relations, which is a kind of mystical approach to how do you refer back to that we're creatures of the earth, right?
Yeah.
I had this amazing experience the other day. I started saying my prayers in alphabetical order.
Mhm.
So praying for, ABC. So Annie, and then these two plants I had, Aphrodite, and da 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 da. And so I get down to G, and I say, who am I praying for G? And I said, Gaia, Gaia. Some people call it Gaia, but
Yeah.
it's like the earth is in my hand. So there she is with, it's
Yeah.
amazing. This is the All Our Relations um,
That's my producer.
videotape on YouTube, which I'm now changing over to use my more modern versions, my more modern photographs.
Wow.
So anyway, when I pray in the morning to Gaia, I felt one morning, and I didn't connect the parts, but I felt all of a sudden my shoulders relaxed and came down, and my legs felt this pulsing, warm flush of energy run through them. I felt real healing around my heart area. It was just a very physical, visceral feeling in my body. And it mystified me until I figured out what was happening, which is I'm praying for Gaia, and I am Gaia,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So that's the immediacy, the non-locality of our prayers. So it's it's a very real thing. And I never really realized how real it was. You have hope about your prayers. You
Yes.
have faith about your prayers. But until that day when my whole body softened up and was tenderized, and I
Yeah.
don't know, just felt so differently because I prayed for the earth. That was a
Mhm.
very important aha moment.
It's, yeah, I think when we get our connection with the planet that we live on and the way we've been destroying it, and ultimately we can't destroy the earth, it will kick us off first, and then it will be fine. As we saw through COVID, take people out of the mix and watch the environment flourish.
Yeah,
It was
exactly.
quite remarkable actually to watch that. But I know for myself, I became vegan a little over a year ago, uh, and it was having a mystical moment, really, that I had been praying for healing of my back, which I have spinal stenosis, so I was in pain all the time, and I was going to a conference at Unity, and I sat back and said, "Hey, if Myrtle Fillmore can cure herself of tuberculosis in the 1800s, surely I can cure this now." And I walked into, so that was on a Sunday. I'm at convention all week. On the Thursday morning, I go into the convention hall with my walker and take my seat. And at the end of the morning session, and the speaker that morning is from climatehealers.org, and he was talking about the importance of doing um, kind of two methods of reducing the heating up of the planet. Part of it being, all the fuel that we burn and all of that. And the other is agriculturally, what we're doing with animals and taking down trees to grow crops and all that, and how that's adding to the carbon in the environment. But it was in that meeting that I had a complete healing. I got up at the end of his session with no physical pain whatsoever, have not had any since. And I knew in that moment the message was be vegan and this is done. And it was remarkable. I came home from the convention and my family were like, what happened to you? Right. Because I
Right.
went from not being able to move and now being able to walk freely. But the message, I knew that they were tied together, that, and again it comes back to caring for the planet, because, and the way that Dr. Rao presented his findings was really easy to hear, because he's a systems engineer, so he was able to put it in a way that makes sense rather than sort of hitting us over the head with dead animals or something that for me just doesn't work. Um, but it was wonderful to hear him talk about the importance for our climate and why, and to explain it in great detail. And then for me to have the healing at that particular moment. And I think that's where we sometimes miss the messages,
Hmm.
is that we really do need to be conscious of where and when things happen in our lives and pay attention to them, because the universe speaks to us in a language that isn't necessarily clear English. So,
I read this line that Kurt Vonnegut wrote on a post-it note and put on his neighbor's windshield. The
mhm.
line is, your planet's immune system is trying to get rid of you. It's so cryptic, but
Wow.
it's like you said, right? We think we got the whole world in our hands, but she's going to drop us off the minute we, show evidence that there's not a majority of us caring for her.
Exactly, exactly. And I look at the way we've treated the indigenous people who actually had it right from the beginning.
Yeah.
They were living with the mother. We use the mother. There's a different
Yeah.
a big difference there.
Yeah. It's like they say when the pilgrims first were on their big ships and they first came into the harbor, and there was all this scent of flowers and plants and lusciousness. What they did was take inventory,
Mm,
and have been doing it ever since. I mean, why are we such a rich country? Because of slavery. We're not
exactly.
rich for any other reason. So
Yeah.
when we begin to put the dots together, then I people sometimes feel overwhelmed, and it's like, what can I do? So much is going wrong. And I always say, figure out what's breaking your heart the most.
Yeah.
And that'll change from month to month, right? Used to be
Mhm.
rainforest for me, now plastic in the ocean. It changes. For some people, it's puppy mills. For some, it's pro choice, abortion, that issue. But we all want to look inside ourselves to say, what's
Mhm.
crushing us? And
Yeah.
once you identify that, then to ask, what is your heart's desire? What would you do if you won the lottery and could do anything? What do you really want to do? Do you want to travel? Do you want to play
Mhm.
golf? Do you want to have circles of people and talk? What do you want to do? You want to write a book? And put those two things together so that you're engaged in an activity that's the funnest thing for you. And you're also addressing the issue that
Yeah.
is most a crushing thing for you, because we can't address them all. And I'm not going to go to the Amazon, right? I can't, that's not something I could do easily anymore, not like going around the world.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, I'll send money to the Rainforest Alliance. John Seed, one of the guys associated with the Rainforest Alliance, had this beautiful line. I saw it in a magazine. He said, I'm not John Seed saving the rainforest. I'm the rainforest saving itself through John Seed.
Hmm. I love that.
It's a little mystical twist.
Yeah, I really like that. That's beautiful. Yeah, if we look at it that way, it changes everything, right?
Yeah. I think
Wow.
our heart's desire is to be one with. And what's a better thing to be one with than the earth, which is
Mhm.
about abundance? Oh, she's still playing my all our relations.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
Die hard going there. So
Wow.
these are little jellyfishes when I'm talking about the cells in our body. So yeah, so
Mm,
with Scott, I feel like all my life I sang out, he's got the whole world in his hand around
mm.
every campfire, and now I boycott that song
Yeah.
because it's abdicating our power,
Yes.
our responsibility, because we have this one earth in our hands.
Yes, we do. Absolutely, we do. The other thing I was having a challenge with, we just had Thanksgiving here in Canada, and, I know you'll have it next month in the US, and I'm thinking about, the whole premise of Thanksgiving. The Pilgrims came here and took over and, destroyed nature, destroyed the indigenous peoples. Uh, so I'm looking at Thanksgiving going, I have to do it differently this year. I have to look at what am I grateful for in my life that has nothing to do with that tradition. It was hard to really think about Thanksgiving for the first time. It was like,
You're reminding me of the first peace calendar we produced as
Mhm.
Syracuse culture workers. We used Howard Zinn's People's History, and for little dates on the page. Remember, well, when we grew up here in America, on Columbus Day, which is October 12th, we'd always be grateful that Columbus discovered America. But on
Mm.
the peace calendar, what we said about October 12th was the Native Americans discovered Columbus.
Oh, I love
And
that.
it's a whole different feeling, but you got to resist how it was presented to us.
Yeah. I was reading a book recently by a Canadian Indigenous writer called The Inconvenient Indian. And he talked about um, a lot of the history that we've taken for granted from the perspective of cowboys and Indians, basically, and how that's actually not very accurate. It's which makes perfect sense when you think about it. It makes perfect sense. But we've taken it for granted. I mean, even the white hats and black hats, when we look at that idea of white and black and how these things are playing out today as we start to dismantle the racism that's so relevant and so current, and for whatever reason we can't seem to get past. When we start looking at these very subtle little things that we just took for granted, what's good, what's bad, that's a big thing to change in our consciousness, to really begin to look at, where am I putting my energy, and have I just bought into this patriarchy, this this system, this colonial system that isn't actually working?
That's the greatest re-education of our times, I think, the re-education of white North America.
Yeah.
That for us to come to understand the nature of white privilege, that we've never had to even be exposed to that. It was after George Floyd that the roof
Yeah.
fell in for me. I've got, I was going to, here, let me show you this.
Yeah.
I just I ordered this set of cards so that I could
Oh,
organize circles,
the anti-racist deck. I like that.
and it's circles of consciousness. So white people can have dialogue about our issues, because we can't go to the black people and say, help us figure this out. This is
No.
our responsibility. So this is a black man, an anti-racist man, who is helping us to do that,
Beautiful.
feeding us the questions that we should, look how good she is, that we should be asking each
Yeah.
other. So there's things that we can do.
Yeah.
There's resources at hand. I have many reasons. I have resources for mystics. I have a deck for mystics called Awakening the Mystics. I have a deck
Hmm.
of cards for people to engage in conversations that matter, to evolve ourselves forward as a circle, to inquire into each other in ways that, if you're in a circle with people and you pick a card, you have to answer. See how she is? She gets
I
these
know,
things
she's
right away.
amazing.
There's my card deck, the inner journey. There's the artist creed. Right. So people, I always say to everybody, every thought I ever had is for sale. Because as a social activist, you try and figure out, how can you make beautiful things that people want to put on their refrigerator or send to somebody else, and have it pack a wallop.
Mhm. I love that. I love that. And I think the conversations, I've had interesting conversations. I was teaching a class last year, and one of my students is Black. Everyone else in the group was white. And there was one gentleman who was in his 70s, and he started talking about, oh, how hard it is to be a white man today. And yeah, and I said to him, I said, "You need to stop talking right now." And he kept going, and I went, "No, no, you don't understand. You must stop talking right now, and you and I are gonna have a conversation at the end of the class, um, because what you're s you can't say that." And then I had a meeting afterwards with the woman who was in my class, and she said, I get it. I get it all the time, unfortunately. But I think that's the key for most of us is noticing it and taking it to task right away. That when we see an injustice or hear one, that we do what we can. For me, it's about educating as much as I can. I have to educate myself. I ministered in two Black churches over 11 years, where there was maybe two or three white people altogether, including myself. So I've had a lot of experience in the Black community, less in the Indigenous communities, which is where I was trained to be racist. My dad was really good at that. So I dealt with that myself, going, holy man, I just thought, what? Try to unravel it and become conscious of how to change that. But having conversations with white people about racism is almost like banging my head against the wall sometimes, because white people don't believe they are. And I think recognizing that we are racist, and I had a Black woman who was leading a workshop with us, and she said the reason only white people can be racist is because they're the only ones who benefit from racism. And I thought, well, that's an interesting way of looking at it. But it's true. We do have our white privilege, where if a Black person is racist against whites, they're not getting any privilege out of that. There's no benefit to them for that. So it was like when she said that, it was like a little bit of cold water over the head going,
I guess so.
wow. And she was in a room of about, I don't know, there was about 100 people on the call, and 99% of them were white. I was expecting all the calls to drop. Nobody left. Everybody stayed and listened, and she's a very good facilitator. But I think coming to recognize that we think being racist is bad, so we'll pretend we're not, just so we don't have to call ourselves bad, rather than I'm uninformed and I need to learn. And I love that idea of the anti-racist deck to create those conversations. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, me too. I'm thrilled about it
Yeah.
because it's direction from the Black community, from
Yeah.
a Black individual, Ibram Zendi, who has written a book called Anti-Racism or something. I can't remember
Yeah.
now, but he's
Yeah.
got a big platform. He does a lot of podcasts, and it's his contribution to us, which he never should have had to make, but he
Exactly.
generously made it to help us out once and for all. It's not if we're racist, it's how does it show up?
How does it show up for us? Because it's really there.
Every one of us. You
Yeah.
can't be an American, or I can't speak for Canada, but you can't be an American without being racist.
Mm.
It's impossible. It's just
Canada
you're
as
born
well.
into it.
Yeah. And we play this game of being nice, but I think nice is a four-letter word as well.
Yeah.
And, it's one of those, I mean, try to define nice. You can't even really define it. It feels a lot like mediocrity, kind of giving in to status quo rather than standing out or standing up, right? I think that's, for me, the big the big definition there of nice. And Canadians are thought of as nice and polite, and that's a great story. Doesn't heal the lives of the Indigenous people who are still going hungry here, who don't have water here, who
It's
are
personalizing, like what you did with veganism.
mhm,
There's a personal approach, a global approach, and
yeah,
when it's personal, like I'm facilitating a book group now, and we're on the book Deepak Chopra's 7 Spiritual Laws of
oh,
Success.
that's a great book, yeah,
And in chapter 2, he's pounding us, pounding it into our brains that giving is receiving. And he's always got at the end of the chapter assignments.
yeah,
And this week's assignment is go out of your way to be nice. I don't know that he used that word, but
yeah,
compliment somebody,
Yeah.
Don't just have an exchange, make them feel better.
Yeah. Do a kindness.
And so when I went to the post office yesterday, I was really conscious of thank the woman for being there. I have an account with them, and so I just bring all my shipping. I don't have to wait in line. And I made
Yeah.
a big deal out of how special she was to give me all these privileges, and I felt like good, marked that off, right? Being nice, being super nice. I'm always trying to have conversations with clerks and be
Yeah.
nice. And that's just our everyday thing. But when he says
Up your game.
up your game, be more conscious of it, that was a challenge.
And the being conscious, like I went through a drive through, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, and I sometimes will pay for the person behind me because it always kind of surprises them to get this little surprise gift. Well, as I was going through, and I just trust intuitively, whatever, if I feel oh, pay for the person behind you. It's like, oh, okay, and it was a cop car behind me and I paid
Wow.
for them, and I thought, "I wonder how they will treat people for the rest of today as a
Ah,
result of this one thing."
that's a
But
sweet
yeah, and
question.
I thought, "I'll bet this has never happened to them before."
I bet. That's a
So
wonderful
we're
thing.
down to our last 2.5 minutes, if you can believe it's gone by so fast. One final thought that you would love people to take away from our conversation today?
A final thought. One is to remember you can have a great ordinary life if you don't have a spiritual practice. If
Yes.
you're not in an active communal relationship with mind at large, cosmic intelligence, whatever you call that, God force.
Yeah.
You can have a life without a spiritual practice, but
Yeah.
you can't have an extraordinary life without a spiritual practice. So
Exactly.
that's your call. And it doesn't mean anything, but every day set aside time for silence so you can receive your bulletins from immortality. 10 minutes a day, but every day make that a commitment so the universe knows you're there. The
Mm,
other thing is let's reflect on divinity being our earth in the
mhm,
trees, right? In the rivers, in the lakes, to reel God in from the heavens and say, this God is what I'm walking on, what I'm breathing in, what I'm
mm.
drinking and eating. This God is my life. I metabolize this God all day long. Those are the two things I have to say today.
Wow. That's all I got to say. Wow. Jen, thank you. You
Thank you.
are truly a light in our world right now, which is so, so needed. And I'm so grateful you said yes to us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, this is beautiful. You're watching The Joy Show, everyone, and joy is the acronym for just one you. Each one of us can only be who we are, so be that and celebrate it and stand out and stand up for life. Thank you, Jen. You're a gift.
Thank you.
And thank you to the New Thought Media Network and anybody watching today. Be sure to come back again next week, Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, where we will do this all again. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye for now.